Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to be talking about AI, specifically this new model called Deepseek R1. We got a listener request, actually, to take a look at the research paper, Deepseek R1, incentivizing reasoning capability in LLMs via reinforcement learning. And there's some pretty cool stuff in here about how AI is learning to reason, so...
Yeah, it's really interesting research.
So you're probably wondering what makes DeepSeek R1 different from all the other AI models out there. Well, it's one of the first that can actually reason. And get this, it learned this ability through something called reinforcement learning.
Right. So reinforcement learning, or RL, it's a big deal in AI. Really different from that traditional supervised learning that a lot of people are familiar with.
So,
See, with supervised learning, you're basically just feeding the model a bunch of data, right?
mhm.
And it learns to mimic patterns. But reinforcement learning, it's more like,
The more hands-on, huh?
yeah, more like teaching a kid to ride a bike, you know?
You don't just give them the instruction manual and say good luck.
Exactly. You let them try, they fall, they get back up. And eventually, through trial and error, all that feedback, they figure it out. That's how DeepSeek R1 learns to reason, by trying, failing, and adapting its approach based on the feedback it gets.
And speaking of figuring things out, the researchers described this aha moment during the development of DeepSeek R10. So this is like the precursor to DeepSeek R1.
Ah, okay.
And it was working on this complex math problem, and initially it got stuck, but then it was like it stepped back, reevaluated its whole approach, and
Like it had a breakthrough.
yeah, like a flash of insight. And then it just figured out this totally new way to solve the problem.
That's a perfect example of emergent behavior. You know, it's not just following a set of instructions, it's actually learning to think for itself, which is,
Pretty wild, huh?
yeah, pretty amazing. A little unnerving, but amazing.
Totally. But DeepSeek R10 did have some quirks, right? The paper mentioned some issues with like language mixing and readability. How does DeepSeek R1 improve on those issues?
Right, good question. So, to kind of address that, the researchers gave DeepSeek R1 a head start. They fed it what they call cold start data. So think of it as like,
Like giving it a foundation.
yeah, exactly, giving the model some high-quality examples of human reasoning to learn from. And from there, they use a four-stage training pipeline. So it starts with that cold start data to establish a solid foundation in reasoning.
Okay, so that's step one. What's next?
Then it moves on to the reasoning-oriented reinforcement learning stage, where it tackles more and more complex problems, mostly math and coding. That's where it really starts flexing its reasoning muscles and gets feedback on its performance.
So it's getting tested constantly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically. And then comes the third stage, which is all about fine-tuning. They call it rejection sampling and supervised fine-tuning. Basically, they're taking only the best responses that the model generates, right?
Hmm.
And they incorporate additional data from all kinds of different fields to kind of refine it.
So it's like a quality control check.
Yeah, exactly. Making sure that the model is producing consistently good reasoning. And then the last stage, the fourth one, that's where they expand its capabilities beyond just reasoning. They call it reinforcement learning for all scenarios, and the focus there is training the model to be helpful and harmless in a wider range of tasks and prompts.
Okay, so it's not just a one-trick pony. It's becoming like a well-rounded AI, huh?
Exactly, yeah.
So we've talked about the training, but how does it actually stack up against other models? I mean, some of these are big names in the AI world.
Right, yeah. And that's what's really impressive, actually. DeepSeek R1 is holding its own against some of the top AI models out there. It's getting state-of-the-art results. We're talking amazing performance on tough tasks like math, coding, even answering knowledge-based questions.
Give me some specifics, though. Like, how does it compare on those benchmark tests?
Okay, so for example, on the AM 2024 benchmark, which was a really tough math competition, DeepSeek R1 achieved a pass at one score of 79.8%.
Okay, so what does that look like compared to, say, OpenAI's O1 11217?
Well, O1 1217 scored a little bit lower, getting 79.2% on the same benchmark.
Oh, wow. So DeepSeek R1 actually beat it. That's pretty cool.
It is impressive. What about those coding benchmarks? How do you think it does against those giants like Claude or GPT-4o?
Oh, yeah, I'm curious about that.
So on Codeforces, which is a platform for competitive programming, DeepSeek R1 achieved a rating in the 96th percentile.
Wow. So it's basically outperforming 96% of human programmers.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's wild. But what about its ability to actually generate functional code? I know that's a big challenge for a lot of these models.
Yeah, absolutely. So they tested that on Live Code Bench, which evaluates a model's ability to generate working code from natural language instructions, and DeepSeek R1 achieved a pass at one score of 65.9%, which is a
That's pretty significant, right?
Yeah, really significant accomplishment.
So DeepSeek R1 is proving to be a real contender in the AI world. But the researchers didn't stop there, did they? The paper mentioned something about distillation.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They didn't just stop there. See, they realized that not everyone has access to the massive computing resources needed to run these huge AI models. So they figured out a way to make this incredible reasoning power accessible to more people.
So how'd they do that? I'm intrigued.
They used this technique called distillation. You can think of it like creating a mini-me version of DeepSeek R1 with all the same reasoning abilities, but in a smaller, more manageable package. Essentially, they transfer the knowledge from the larger model to a smaller one.
That's pretty ingenious. But did it work? Were these smaller distilled models any good?
The results are pretty amazing, actually. They created this series of DeepSeek R1 distill models, and even though they're a lot smaller, they can still get incredible results.
Like what?
Well, their DeepSeek R1 Distill Kun7b model, which is significantly smaller than the original one, still managed to score 55.5% on the Amy 2024 benchmark. And it actually even outperformed some larger models like the QWQ32B Preview on several reasoning benchmarks.
Wow, that's pretty remarkable. It sounds like distillation could be a real game changer for a lot of researchers and developers who don't have access to these supercomputers.
Yeah, definitely. This technology has the potential to make powerful AI available to a much wider audience. So many possibilities.
So we've talked about reinforcement learning, emergent behavior, DeepSeek R1's training, its performance, and this distillation technique.
It's a lot, yeah.
It is. But here's the question I think everyone is really asking. What does this all mean for us? Why should we care about this new AI model and all its reasoning capabilities?
That's the question, right? Well, I think DeepSeek R1 represents a massive leap forward in AI. This is technology that could completely transform the way we live and work. Just imagine, like, personalized AI tutors that can adapt to your learning style, or scientific breakthroughs powered by AI analyzing huge data sets and uncovering hidden patterns.
So it's like AI is becoming a partner in like our pursuit of knowledge and progress.
Yeah,
That's pretty exciting stuff. But what about the challenges though? What are some of the future hurdles that researchers are facing with this kind of technology?
one thing the paper mentions is the challenge of language mixing. Even though DeepSeek R1 is mostly trained in English and Chinese, it sometimes mixes languages in its responses, which is
I mean, it's kind of cool, but
it's an interesting quirk, yeah. But it could definitely be confusing or even problematic depending on the context.
right. Anything else?
Another interesting challenge is what they call prompt engineering, which is essentially figuring out how to ask the right questions or give the right instructions to get the best results from an AI. DeepSeek R1, like other large language models, is really sensitive to how information is presented to it.
So it's not just about having a brilliant AI, it's about knowing how to talk to it.
Exactly. It's like any relationship. Communication is key.
Yeah, and as these AI models keep evolving, that relationship between human language and AI understanding is only going to get more complex, more important to figure out.
Definitely. It's a fascinating area of research. It's really fascinating how DeepSeek R1's development kind of mirrors the way we humans learn to reason.
Oh, that is an interesting parallel. How so?
Well, think about how DeepSeek R1 starts with that cold start data, right? All those examples of good reasoning. It's kind of like how we humans learn.
Right.
We're born into a world where people are already reasoning, making decisions, solving problems. We observe all those examples from our parents, teachers, friends, even from, like, the books we read or movies we watch. It's like our own version of that cold start data, right?
Right, like it shapes our early understanding of logic and stuff.
Exactly. And then as we grow up and experience the world, we encounter new challenges, new problems that make us refine our reasoning skills, right? Just like DeepSeek R1 going through those reinforcement learning stages, we try things, we mess up, we learn from our mistakes, and over time we develop those more sophisticated reasoning strategies. It's all trial and error, feedback, adaptation.
Yeah, we always hear, learn from your mistakes. Never really thought about it like that, like connecting it to AI.
It's through those experiences, those successes and failures, that our reasoning abilities really develop. And just like DeepSeek R1 benefits from that feedback loop, so do we. It's almost like we're constantly running our own internal, like, reinforcement learning algorithms, optimizing our thinking based on the feedback we get from the world.
That's a cool way to think about it. So if this AI model is learning to reason in such a similar way to us, I mean, what does that even mean for the future?
It's pretty mind-boggling to think about all the possibilities. But it's important to remember that DeepSeek R1, even though it's super advanced, It's still in those early stages of development, It's like a young student, tons of potential, but still so much to learn.
So we got to keep guiding its development responsibly, huh? Make sure it aligns with our values and goals.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just about creating AI that's powerful. It's about creating AI that's actually beneficial, AI that makes our lives better, contributes to the greater good. We need to think carefully about how this technology will impact the world and make sure it's used ethically for the betterment of humanity.
What do you think are some of the next big things in AI reasoning? Where do you see this technology going?
That's a good question.
So many exciting directions it could go in. One area I'm super interested in is developing AI that can understand not just facts and figures, but those abstract concepts, like emotions, values, beliefs.
That seems really complex.
Yeah, for sure it is.
Right.
But also incredibly important if we want AI to truly collaborate with humans on a deeper level.
Mhm.
I mean, imagine AI systems that could actually understand our motivations, our fears, our hopes, our dreams.
Okay, now that's a future I'd love to see. Anything else? Any other areas that are really exciting to you? Another area I'm fascinated by is the potential for AI to boost human creativity. We kind of touched on this earlier, but I think it's worth thinking about more. Imagine AI tools that can help us push the boundaries of art, music, literature. Tools that help us explore new ways to express ourselves, tell stories, experience the world.
So it's like AI becomes our partner in creativity, helping us unlock new levels of imagination. That's pretty amazing. But I also wonder about the role of human feedback in all this. It seems like that feedback loop is really key to shaping these models and making sure they align with, our expectations and goals.
Absolutely, yeah. Human feedback is essential. It's what helps these models learn and adapt and evolve in a way that benefits us. It's not just about AI learning to reason, it's about AI learning to reason in a way that makes sense to us, aligns with our values, and ultimately contributes to, our well-being.
It's a two-way street, right? Like a partnership where we guide its development and help it reach its full potential.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that we're not just passive observers in this tech revolution. We're active participants, shaping the future of AI through our interactions, feedback, and choices.
That is empowering. Now, you mentioned earlier that Deepseek R1 uses both reinforcement learning and supervised learning in its training. Can you unpack that a bit more for us?
Of course. Remember we were talking about Deepseek R1 going through those reinforcement learning stages, learning through trial and error? Well, it also uses aspects of supervised learning, especially in that initial cold start phase and the rejection sampling and supervised fine-tuning stage.
Right, right, where it's given those starting examples and then has its output refined based on human feedback.
Exactly. So it's not just blindly exploring and figuring things out on its own. It's also learning from the guidance of human experts, like a mix of self-discovery and mentorship.
I like that. Finding the right balance between innovation and direction. Now, while we're talking about all this cool stuff, like the potential of this technology, I think it's important to also acknowledge the, potential downsides, risks associated with this advanced AI reasoning. What are some concerns people have raised?
Yeah, that's a crucial question. Like any powerful technology, AI has risks. One concern I hear a lot is about job displacement. As these AI systems get better at doing things that used to need human intelligence, there's this worry that some jobs might become automated.
That's a valid concern. I mean,
Right.
we've already seen how automation has changed certain industries, and AI is likely to continue changing the job market even more in the future. So, how do we prepare for this?
I think it's something we need to be proactive about, both individually and as a society. We need to adapt our education systems, invest in programs to train people for new jobs, and maybe even rethink how we support people who are going through these changes. Our social safety nets. It's not about being afraid of the future. It's about shaping it in a way that works for everyone.
It's about being proactive and creating a future where, humans and AI can both thrive.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that AI is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or bad.
Sure.
It depends on the people who develop and use it, their intentions.
Yeah.
It's on us to make sure we're steering AI in a direction that benefits everyone. And that brings us back to something you mentioned earlier, that connection between, human language and how AI understands the world.
That question has really stuck with me throughout this whole conversation.
It's a big one, right? I mean, if we're teaching AI to think by teaching it our languages, Can it really understand all the nuances, the subtle meanings, the emotions we pack into words?
Yeah, exactly. Like, is it really grasping the deeper meaning, or is it just mimicking patterns, playing with symbols without really getting what they represent?
That's a question that philosophers, linguists, computer scientists, they've all been grappling with for years.
Hmm.
And as these AI models like Deepseek R1 get more and more sophisticated, more human-like, that question just becomes even more important.
Because the closer it gets to how we think, the more we have to face those big questions about consciousness and understanding, right? What does it really mean to think, to be conscious? Kind of blows your mind a little.
It really does. It makes you realize that even with all our fancy tech, we're still figuring out our own minds, trying to understand the secrets of like our own existence. And AI is becoming a mirror, in a way, reflecting our complexities, our strengths and weaknesses back at us.
It's like having a conversation with ourselves, trying to figure out what it means to be human, but through the eyes of something else.
Exactly. And it can be exciting, maybe even a little scary sometimes, but it's a conversation we need to be having.
Yeah, it forces us to think about those big questions, about our place in the world, the future we're creating with all this technology.
Absolutely. And as we keep exploring the limits of AI, those questions are only going to become more and more important.
Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive into DeepSeek R1. We covered a lot, its capabilities, its potential impact, and even some of those bigger philosophical questions it brings up about intelligence and understanding.
It's been a great discussion.
We hope you enjoyed going on this journey with us. Keep thinking about these ideas, ask questions, and keep talking about the future of AI, because it's a future we're all creating together.
Keep those brains working.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.